Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast. We're going to get started with today's live. Frankly, I'm just getting a little bit behind because I had a meeting that just ran longer. So hopefully you can appreciate that. But I'm excited to dive into today's topic. I get it all prepared. I just like going into my phone so I can make sure that I'm good to go and you can see the audio and visual. So maybe somebody give me a quick audio visual check and we get rocking and rolling. Um, da, 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 da. Okay, I see myself on my phone. I'm good to go. Hey, I like to start off these lives with a quick little tip that says thank you to folks that are out there. And one of the things, if you haven't done this, that I would highly encourage you to do is go check out GAO. Anytime you're working with a government agency, the Government Accountability Office, these guys put out some phenomenal reports that talk about challenges that agencies are facing and the suggestions that they're giving agencies to do. It also often has the response from the agency. Hey, we agree with this, we disagree with this. And they'll throw in things like, this is what we plan to do to address the challenge. And so I'd encourage you to go check out GAO if you haven't. That's a great way to, ironically, going with today's topic of getting a second meeting with federal buyers by knowing them. It's a great way to get in there and talk to them. Just going to pull my slides up for today's topic. Okay, and I did want to say thank you before we get started to the sustaining members. Thank you very much for being a GovCon Chamber of Commerce sustaining member. We couldn't do all this without you. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Let's go ahead and dive into the training. I want to make sure my captions are all off. We're rocking and rolling. Thanks, Leslie, Angel, for giving me that sound check. Appreciate it. Okay, let's get rocking and rolling. In this training, I want to share some tips for successfully building a relationship, right, in the federal space. In particular, how you can use curiosity to land a second and third meeting. Buyers don't really care what you know until they know that you care. I've said this before. Buyers don't care what you know until they know that you care, right? But how can you show them that you care? That's the question, right? I always loved it when people would tell me something like, you need to show that you care. You need to do something. And I'm told what to do, but I'm not told how to do it. I'm not given the how along with the what, which makes it easier for me to actually do that. And so in this training, I'm going to teach you the how that you can follow, an agency, right, to improve your relationships, how you can get out there and show them that you care. There's so many things you can do. So I'm going to focus pretty tightly on this idea, this general theme of following an agency in order to show them that you care. You're taking the time to care. So if that's something you're excited about learning today, as much as I am and teaching you, put I care into the chat. Let me know that you care and that you want to have more meetings. You want to have more federal relationships inside these agencies that you are targeting. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to my daily live federal sales training, where I teach you tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner. And since 2013, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow the process A to Z, we're going to achieve predictable, repeatable results. That's what I want for you. That's why I do this training, so that you can have those results. Before we get started, do me a favor, help buyers remember who you are. I see many of you doing that. It's great. I see many of you care, which is awesome. But put into the chat, if you haven't already, into the comments, your company name and your core competency. Use 2 or 3 words to describe what your core competency is. Make it easy for buyers, for me, for others in the community to remember who you are. Also, I want you to engage with the community. These are people, this is networking and a networking opportunity. So these are people you can find today and build relationships with offline. Just take it offline and have an intro call, et cetera. And it's a great opportunity to do that. And if you want to, put your website in. I totally love that and encourage that, so that people can go follow up and learn more about your company. All right, I want to start with, so the theme of today's meeting is getting a second meeting with federal buyers is really what I see as the theme, right? I put down, are you struggling to get a second meeting with federal buyers in the title? But this is about, are you struggling to get any meeting? In particular, I'm talking about a second meeting because I often hear people struggle with that. hey, I can get that first meeting, small business specialist, whoever, but then it doesn't go anywhere. And I want to give you a tip on how to keep the momentum going. And so I just want to start with, what does it mean to follow an agency? Because I'm going to encourage you to follow an agency in the activity you do. And so the first thing is, it just means you care enough about your target customer to track everything they share. Business development, and this is business development, right? Business development fundamentally is learning about an agency, understanding an agency as well as anybody who works in that agency, and then building relationships and identifying opportunities. Those are the three core deliverables or outcomes of your business development effort in any agency. Understand them, build relationships, identify opportunities. And that's what I mean by following, right? I really want you to follow them and make an effort to understand the agency out there. And so one of the things, let me just show you too, if you haven't seen this before, I never know who's on the training until after the fact, but let me show this just so I put it in perspective, right? Right in the middle of this 7-step process for federal revenue success is relationships. Relationships are the foundation to everything. They lead to good opportunities. They lead to winning proposals. Winning proposals come from the ability to learn more and more from the customer about what you're going to write, right? And they lead to sales. And so in here, you see that it begins with research, targeting, and outreach. But I really want to focus on the relationship part. And in the relationship part is where we are showing that we care enough about a customer that we're going to track what they share. What I like to say is that if they post it, you review it. If they talk, you listen. If they participate, you attend. When they write it, you read it. If they share it, you consume it. If you think this way, right? If they post it, you review it. Think about social media and all the places they might post something out there. If they talk, right, you listen. And this could be podcast. People are doing podcasts all day long, and you get federal agency participants into those podcasts as guests. You want to listen to it. If they're talking, listen. If they participate at an event, a conference, et cetera, a matchmaking event, go and attend that event. Go attend that conference, right? If Air Force is your customer, then attend those major Air Force conferences. In San Diego, the Navy has Gold Coast. Attend that if you're in the Navy, right? So if they're participating, you're attending. If they write it, right, I want you to read it. And this writing, right, obviously it could be the social media stuff, but what I'm really meaning is strategic documents. If they're putting out things like a strategic plan for their agency, an annual report, reporting on the last fiscal year, they might be putting out, the Army put out a cloud strategy. There's data strategies. There's human resource, workforce development strategies. You want to be reading these strategic documents. If they're putting out a budget, right? It might be 800 pages. I don't care. You don't have to read every single line, but you do have to go through that document, right? If they write it, you read it. In the budget is where you find all sorts of nuggets related to what they're trying to accomplish, et cetera. And so, taking the time to read these documents that they write will show that you care. It's you following their agency, learning about their agency each time they're putting out a new document. And if they share it, consume it. And what I mean is, in any of these ways I just said, whether it's written or oral, you want to be able to communicate back with them. If they're on YouTube or any of these other places, you want to watch their videos and consume it. And by consuming it, it means you're starting to care enough about that agency to really understand them. And the reason I say, if you do this correctly, you can know more about an agency than anybody working in that agency, is because most people in an agency will not consume their own agency's information. Think about just your own company, or if you're in a small company now, think about a little bigger company you might have worked at. How often do you have to convince employees in the company to read the stuff you're creating for the company, right? They're focused on their job. It's a totally normal thing. I'm not focused on finance. I'm focused on sales because that's where I'm at. And so if you take the time and you're reading everything, including a financial report, for example, coming out of an agency, and you see how they talk about themselves from a financial reporting perspective, or the OIG, the Office of Inspector General, who looks at an agency and gives themselves candid feedback about where they're at, what they could work on, things like that. Well, they have their own reports. If you're looking at those, if you take the time to own this, you will know more than anybody in an agency. And that gives you a strong position to come at any kind of relationship you want to build. Having a second meeting becomes so much easier when you consume what they're creating. And I'm going to talk about how do you do that. That was kind of what do I mean by following. And I want to get a little bit more specific into how you can follow an agency, right? So in this perspective, what I mean is the actual task. And so since I don't have a handout at the moment, you might want to write this down. I'm going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It would have been great if I had numbered my bullets instead of just used bullets. Okay, so these are in no particular order, except for I'm trying to start at the agency and go farther away from the agency. But how can you follow an agency to stay aware of whatever they're putting out there so that you can consume it, right? First place is the agency website. Review every single page. The first time you go on there, plan to spend 8, 16, 24 hours. If you're trying to get $1 million, $5 million, $10 million in business from a particular agency, let's say like NAVC, Naval Sea Systems Command for the Department of Navy, right? Spending 8 hours consuming what's on there is really important because that's the number one place where that agency is presenting information to industry and to the public. And so go on an agency website and read the pages they write. There's all, like, you can go down this rabbit hole constantly. I was looking at NAVC earlier today, and as I'm looking at it, they have a resources tab. They have a media tab. They have a so you want to do business with us tab. They have all sorts of information. And one tip about agency websites when you're researching them through that is go to the very bottom of most websites, especially in the federal government, and they should have a, I think it's like a site index. Actually, let me see if I can see it here. Site pages, it might be called. Yeah, I don't see it here at the moment, which is ironic since I'm giving a tip. But at the bottom, you tend to see site pages or site index. And basically what it is, hey, here's our entire website laid out in an organizational way. So you can start looking at it and reviewing it. But websites are a great place to follow and see new information. Right now in 2023, we're only January 20th is when this video is being recorded. There's 23 articles in the media section of NAVC's website. So just one part of the Navy, they have already written 23 articles that could be useful, news articles that you could go in, read. They talk about what they're doing. They also mention people's names. Great place to figure it out. Next thing is another way to do this is email alerts. Often on agency websites, if you would like to stay informed, go ahead and add your email here. So I think NavAir, I saw one like that, NavSup maybe. But in your agency of choice, just find out, do you have a place where I can add my email and you will let me know? I belong to several in the Air Force where I get these email messages. The Air Force has just shared out some new information. They want industry, whoever, to get hold of. And that leads to the next one, which is kind of along the same lines, little different, is newsletters or our newsletters, right? Go into an agency and find out where their newsletters are, if they have them, and begin to follow them, consume them, but also they allow you to subscribe to them so you can be notified of the next one. I think NavWar, today's example is Navy, and I'm bouncing around to the system commands, but NavWar, I think it was NavWar, could have been higher up at the Department of Navy, but either way, they had like 7 different newsletters that I came across, I discovered, and it was amazing because it was all sorts of good information that I was interested in. They're like 1 and 2 page newsletters. They come out every 2 or 3 months. Actually, if you're on LinkedIn and you're tracking the Navy, make sure you join my group, the Navy and DIB LinkedIn group. So just Navy and DIB. Maybe somebody will put that in chat for me. But if you go in there, you'll be able to see these newsletters that I put in. Long story short, though, I just subscribed. So now when a new newsletter comes out, I'm notified that there's a new newsletter out there. The next one, the next 2 go into LinkedIn. And so this goes back to how do you follow an agency? You can follow a LinkedIn company page. Each of us work for a company. We have our personal profiles and our company page. In the company page, you can get a lot of information. So there's company pages. There's tons of company pages out there, but just narrow it down to what you're doing. If you're selling to NAVC, they've got a LinkedIn company page presence, and you can follow them. So when they have something of interest, they put it out. And all you have to do is go to their page, hit the button that says follow, and up in the top right hand, you can say notifications. So tell me every time something is posted. That way it comes into your notification tab on LinkedIn. By the way, sidebar, if you're not on LinkedIn every single day, the beginning of your day for 15 minutes, then you're missing a good opportunity to just network with folks that are out there. If you begin to clean up your feed, which means unfollow the people you really are not interested in seeing their content with, then more of the content you want to see will surface up in your notifications. So, for example, I'm always seeing stuff come out of U.S. Cyber Command, always seeing stuff coming out of the Department of Navy, because these are people I followed, and I have made sure I pushed out the content I don't want. And when I say the content I don't want, there's people I'm connected with. It's just so unrelated. I pretty much want to see anything that's in the GovCon space because I like to engage that way. But company pages are a great place for you to follow agencies and understand what's going on. The next one is our personal pages. And so if you think about NAVC, or I said NAVWAR, and let me use this example because it's one of my favorite, but you have the Department of Navy, and under that you have the U.S. Navy. So if you don't know this, you have the Department of Navy, and then the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Marine Corps are the two services under the Department of Navy. And below the Navy, you've got the NAVWAR, which is Naval Information Warfare Systems Command. And below that, you have PEO Digital. And the reason I'm saying that is if I go in and find the company page for PEO Digital, obviously I'm going to follow it because I just said I'm going to follow company pages that are relevant and that I want to stay up to date. But in there, I can see anybody who says that PEO Digital is their employer. And I'll often see hundreds of people, right? And so I can then selectively begin to follow those people, right? There's, I think PEO Digital is led by a woman, Ruth, and I follow her. She doesn't actually post a lot on LinkedIn, but I follow her. So when she does post, though, I get the message. And she's done 2 in the last month or so that I've seen pop up on my radar, and I can expand that. She's the head of, I think it's PEO Digital. Don't hold me to that, but she's the head of her PEO, and I follow other people within her organization. Well, you can do that same thing so that when they're sharing information out, it's really helpful. An example of why this is valuable, I'm in the IT space, and I had been following multiple people from the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, and one of them, that's the CTO, I think, one of them had posted it's called Software Way. It's how the NGA planned on doing the software development going forward, et cetera. This was really helpful to the customers that are in my workshop. And so I was able to be notified about it, and this is a while ago, and then get engaged in the discussion where all of a sudden I'm in a discussion with the CIO, the CISO, and other people just in this LinkedIn discussion. And it doesn't mean they all of a sudden go, oh, there's Neil, he's great, let's buy from him. But it's the start of a relationship, or for the person I was following, it's the continuation. So figure out who the people are at an agency you would want to follow and begin to connect with them. Some other examples, right? LinkedIn is where I live and breathe, and I love this. No offense to the other platforms, but you can also follow your agency of choice on other social media platforms. I talked about NAVC. Well, they have a Facebook presence, they have a Twitter presence, and a YouTube presence. So going out there, following these channels, and clicking on the notification bell so that you get notified when they do something. This is how you can stay in touch. So just backing up for a second, agency websites, email alerts, newsletters, LinkedIn company pages, LinkedIn personal pages, other social media platforms. I have 3 more I want to share, but thank you for those of you who are putting it into the thing. Okay, so the 3 more that I want to share with you on how you can follow an agency. How can I stay informed about an agency to know more than their folks? Or how can I know enough so that I can go in and have that second meeting and more meetings out there? Well, GAO reports, I talked about this earlier, but Government Accountability Office, they often write reports about particular agencies, and you can track on that. You can set up a feed to see what's happening, what's changed. And if they write about the Navy as an example, I can be notified, or you can go in and just start consuming that content that they have in there. They don't write about agencies too often, maybe twice a year at most, I think. So it's not like you have to track it all the time, but it is a great place to go in because most people won't read it. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the training, or before the training started today, is that GAO reports will tell you what the challenges are, what they're recommending to that agency for improvements, and then they'll share with you the agency response as well. The agency said, well, we agree with you on points 5, 6, and 7, but not 1, 2, 3, 4 or something. Or, and they'll add in, here's our course of action. Here's what we plan on doing. And when you see that, if there's ways that you can help that agency, it's a great conversational starter. You can use this going in. So here's another one that maybe it's newer to some of you out there. I call it divots. I actually haven't ever heard somebody say it in a way that I see as correct, so I'll figure it out. But the acronym spells out Defense Visual Information Distribution Service. So the Defense Visual Information Distribution Service. So divots is a great place to go in because people are sharing content in there. They're sharing a lot of photos, but a lot of videos. I often go into this source to find briefing. I watch leadership from the Navy or from the Army or Department of Education. Well, not Department of Education, DOD. This is DOD focused, but leadership come in and they're doing briefings to the news. They're doing press briefings and it'll be in there. And I don't mean press briefings that are attractive to CNN and Fox or whoever from a news perspective. This is more about, hey, this is where we're going with cloud technology. This is our our shot to the moon and back or whatever. It's where they're just talking to stuff that the only people who really care, the reporters who are there, are very technical, defense-focused reporters. And it's not like sensational news. It's just good business news. Well, this site, Defense Visual Information Distribution Service, that's one of these hidden gems of doing your research and following an agency and really understanding, because often the agency doesn't even put these videos up on their own website, right? So go there. Last place I'll tell you about on how you can follow an agency is Google, right? It sounds like such a simple thing when I say Google. Obviously, I mean, Google search is one part of it, right? Do searching on Google. If you do a Navy, right, I might type in Navy. I might type in Navy file type : file type : PDF. So then I'm only seeing stuff that's coming back related to the Navy. That's a PDF file. I generally will sit there and say, hey, just show me stuff in the last month, especially if you're only going after one agency, which for a business developer, that's generally what you should be doing. If you're a small business doing less than 5 million, you should be going after one department, in my opinion. If you do that, then you can be doing these kind of Google searches pretty frequently to see what's changing. But that's searches. But something else you can do that you may not be aware of is you can set up something called Google Alerts. And I have several of these that come in every single day. Well, not every single day, but every single day there's a change. And so I'll set up an alert. Let's just say my name. I want to see anything that's in Google related to Neil McDonnell, right? And so I'll see stuff coming back. And if I had an alert like that, which I secretly do, I would see this guy in Ireland who keeps driving me nuts. He's like a CEO of a big pharmaceutical or something. He keeps hitting Google, but I'm tracking on that. But I'm also tracking on government customers that I want to focus on. So the Navy, I might tighten that up really well and say, I just want to track PEO digital. But it's very few steps to set up a Google alert. You just go into Google and type in, literally go into Google and say, Google Alerts. That's all you have to do is type in Google Alerts in the search bar, and it will come back and tell you, do this, this, this. And you can track on the activity that's out there. So it's a great way to track your agency by having Google push information to you. It takes 2 seconds to read it. And if you actually set your computer up correctly, when things come into your inbox from that Google alert, you can have them automatically move to a folder over here. And you just tell yourself, look, once a week, I'm going to look at that. Or once in a morning, I will look at that. But I'm not looking at it every single second. So it won't crowd your inbox. It'll come into your inbox and go to your Navy research folder or something, right? So there's a way to push it out and manage your time as well. Hopefully that stuff's making sense. Put down, follow an agency if you feel like I've given you some good tips on how to follow an agency. And just telling you those again: agency website, email alerts from their website, newsletters, LinkedIn company page, LinkedIn personal pages, other social media platforms, GAO, Defense Visual Information Distribution Service, and Google. And if you're trying to track on these, I'm pretty sure somebody has been typing them in who are super cool. So GovCon hero, thanks, Jeff. Okay, let me go to kind of wrap this training up with a couple of steps that you can do to show somebody that you care, right? People don't care what you know until they know that you care. Well, I showed you how you can track information, but how can you go show them that you care? I just wanted to give you a couple of tips on these people you're trying to have a second meeting with, or a third meeting, right? Meetings are what are building those relationships. So one way that you can show that you care is just follow up when you see something new and relevant. Maybe you could look at the, like I said, divots, right? You watch a video over there, you can come back and say, hey, Jane, I just watched this video of Commander so-and-so, her commander and her, in the Navy or the Army or wherever. But I just watched this. I thought it was really interesting. It related to some of the things you had talked about is great. More often than not, when you say something about especially dividends, then they won't even know what you're talking about. What is that? What's that video? Can you send me a link? But you can do that on anything, right? When you see something new and relevant to the relationship you're trying to build, just reach out and say, hey, I thought this was pretty cool. You don't need to do it spammy, like too often, right? But when you find something that's really relevant to it, an example is Paul Puckett used to be the head of Army Cloud. And so if I would see something that he did over in the Air Force where he did a joint presentation and he was talking about some of his Army Cloud stuff in a larger context of DoD Cloud, I reached out and said, hey, Paul, I watched that thing. It was really cool to see your insight on it. I'd love to see that thing that you mentioned within, like a strategic plan or whatever. And always he would engage, right? Not everybody's always going to engage, but if I'm building that relationship, we would engage. And so that's something you can do is follow up when you see something you like and you think is relevant. Another thing going with that same very angle, and let's just use Paul as my continued thing, is ask somebody a question about what you see as a follow-on, right? So if I'm trying to follow Paul and continue to build a relationship, if I want another meeting with them to introduce my company or learn more about Army Cloud, if I see something over here that allows me to ask a question, you know what, Paul, I was watching this Navy briefing on clouds and they were talking about these two big challenges. I'm curious, how's the Army got past that or have they, right? Do you have a few minutes to discuss? However you want to set the meeting up is different, but this idea of if you see something, you can use it as a way to ask a question, and asking a question is a way to try to get a follow-up meeting. One of the reasons I think we don't get second and third meetings is we don't really give them a reason to have a meeting. Do we need to get an intro meeting again? That doesn't make sense. But if we're diving deeper into their needs or their challenges or some capabilities we have, now we're giving it something more specific. So I mentioned ways you can show you care. Those were ways to reach out. But if you actually have a meeting and you go in, I would always reference stuff. We used to call customers all the time and we would say, hey, we were reading this document and on this page, it was talking about this, and I'd really like to explore that. That's showing them that we did our homework, that we care enough to figure out a question to talk about, and it's showing that we prepared. So referencing something in a meeting. And the last tip I have for you on steps to show you care is if they participate somewhere, a podcast, or they win an award, and you can often see these things, just reach out and congratulate them. And don't do it in the normal way everybody does where you're giving a thumbs up to a bunch of people. Do it separately. Pick up the phone and call them. Hey, I saw you won this. I just wanted to call you and say congratulations. No one's going to pick up the phone and call them. So if you can get good at that, it's a great way to do it. But congratulate them in participating as a guest on a podcast. I really liked it. You shared a lot of information. Okay, so those are 4 quick tips there. And just as a recap, right, when you think about what does it mean to follow an agency, it just means that you care enough to do the research, right? You're doing business development. That's what it really means about what it is to do business development. How to follow an agency, I'll try to get these bullets that I shared, dump them into the comments for you. But really following an agency is just you determining you're going to do it. And the last thing is, as you learn more about the agency or people within the agency, use that as a way to try to get that second meeting, third meeting, or to strengthen the quality of the meetings from their perspective as well. Hopefully that made sense. If you found value in today's training, do me a favor, throw thanks into the chat. Let us know. By the way, I do have a calendar invite so that you can put this training on your calendar pretty permanently. You decide if you can show up live every day. But instead of waiting for whether I'm sending you a LinkedIn invitation, this is a calendar event that gets added to your Outlook, Google Calendar, whatever. So if you want one of those, do me a favor, just put calendar invite into the chat and I'll send it to you. Remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training. Have a great weekend.